Scams and the misinformation economy are generating billions in profits for social media giants. Even clicking out of curiosity makes money for scammers via platforms like Google, YouTube, and Instagram. So while lives are being disrupted and even destroyed around the world, is anything being done to stop it? Or is too much money at stake for big tech to care? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is the misinformation economy. Well, it's a disturbing reality of our lives on social media. Scam artists and misinformation pervade, creating victims around the world who can suffer severe financial and psychological damage. Perhaps even more disturbing, though, is that big tech companies are knowingly profiting from it. Upon viewing internal documents from Meta, Reuters reported the company made around $16 billion in revenue by running online ads for scams and banned goods. Meanwhile, AI-generated content is pushing false but salacious fake information that generates the clicks that earn these companies and the scammers behind them even more money. Here's a look now at how it happens and what, if anything, is really being done to stop it.
Scams on social media are harming public figures and ordinary people alike, causing financial losses for targeted individuals. Yet, tech giants are earning billions of dollars. Scammers have used AI-generated videos of Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Tesla CEO Elon Musk, and Spanish Princess Leonor to trick people into fraudulent investment schemes. The issue is not limited to a few cases. One notable victim is Financial Times chief economics commentator Martin Wolf. Scammers published deepfake videos of Wolf as advertisements on Meta's platforms. In those, an avatar invites users to join a WhatsApp group where he purportedly shares investment tips and insights on high-potential stocks. Wolf notified Facebook, and the company said the offending ad had been taken down, but new ones kept coming. Over 1,700 deepfake videos and images featuring him reached nearly 1 million people in the EU alone. In an attempt to combat the issue, Wolf joined Meta's face recognition program, which aims to prevent such abuses. But that hasn't worked either. On the contrary, after the Financial Times notified Meta about those scam ads, they reached even more users. While social media platforms have extensive community guidelines that prohibit scamming, the examples demonstrate a lack of enforcement. And a Reuters report from last November shows why. Internal company documents revealed that Meta earned $16 billion from ads promoting scams and banned goods in 2024, which accounted for 10% of its annual revenue. The company shows 15 billion higher-risk scam advertisements to its users every day. Meta says it's taking steps to address the issue. However, internal communications reveal that the company imposed limits on how much revenue it can lose from restricting such scams. And its November 2024 strategy says losing the money coming from those scam ads would be more costly than any legal action against the company. In early February, US senators introduced anti-scam legislation aimed at compelling social media companies to prevent fraudulent advertising.
If a company is making money from running ads on their site, it has a responsibility to make sure those ads aren't fraudulent. This bipartisan bill will hold social media companies accountable and protect consumers' money online.
Researchers warn that online scams have reached an industrial scale and, if left unchecked, could have disastrous consequences for society as a whole.
So joining me now to look further at how big tech actually profits from scams and false information, plus who's trying to fight it and how, are from San Juan, Puerto Rico, Facebook whistleblower and advocate for accountability and transparency in social media, Frances Haugen. From Birmingham, Alabama, cybersecurity consultant and former U.S. most wanted cyber criminal Brett Johnson. And from Washington, Senior Fellow at the Center for Technology Innovation at the Brookings Institution, Darrell West. Thank you all so much, sincerely, for being with me. All of this really is just so disturbingly perverse in many ways. It's been clearly exposed that illegal scams, frauds, false information are making profits not just for those who generate the fake content, but for the richest big tech companies out there. Francis, why has this been able to persist?
You know, it's fascinating. Until I started talking to people around the world about their experiences of social media, I was actually not that aware of how extensive scams are outside the United States. For example, in Australia, there's a chronic problem of people impersonating celebrities and then taking huge sums of money from little old ladies' retirements. A huge part about why there is this disparity, why it is that my perception is different than the Australians is, or perhaps where your listeners are, is because Facebook doesn't allocate the same amount of safety resources inside the United States versus outside the United States, because they're afraid of being regulated in the US, but they're not as afraid of facing consequences abroad.
Expand on that, Francis. Why essentially can't we count on these companies like Meta to just do the right thing? Why do they have to be legally forced to do so?
We have to remember that Facebook is a private business. They may be operating a huge fraction of our information environment, but they're a for-profit company. And they have to report to their investors every quarter how much they spend on expenses, things like safety, versus how much revenue they bring in through things like advertisements. One way to increase your profits is by spending less on things like safety.
I mean, how easy, Francis, final question, would it be for them to actually just eliminate these scams and frauds altogether? Would it be a fairly simple operation, given the tech that they have behind them? Yeah.
That's what's so profoundly frustrating when I have these conversations, which is when we look at things like celebrity scams. That's a great example of how there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. How many celebrities are being used in large amounts today in Australia? Probably less than 100 or 200 names, but being used over and over again. This is like famous billionaires being used to spread crypto scams. They could be doing very simple things like if you file an ad and you have the face of one of these celebrities, if you use their name, a human just does a second check on it. They don't do that, though, because one, they're not legally required to. And second, no one actually knows how bad the problem is. They don't have to even disclose basic statistics about how often people report being scammed, how much money people lose, those kinds of things.
Interesting. You know, Brett, I'll turn to you because you were actually once behind some very notable cyber crimes. You admit you hurt a lot of kind of innocent people through internet scams. You served time in prison for it, but now you're helping fight online fraud. So tell us why you chose that path and what's out there now that people really need to be protected from.
Sure. I served 7.5 years in prison. I escaped from prison, was on the United States Most Wanted list. I was continually given the opportunity to turn my life around and continually turned it down until finally I did. I chose to take the right path and do that right thing. The problem is today that cybercrime is the third largest economy on the planet. So the idea that you can stop all the scams that are on any platform, you're not going to do that. You're not. There's hundreds of thousands, millions of individuals out there that are trying to profit through victimization of individuals. And that's not going to stop. Now, you can mitigate the problem. Certainly those celebrity scams, a lot of the crypto scams, stuff like that you can take care of. You're not going to stop all of them. You're not. You know, in the United States, we've got 37,000 FBI field agents. Of those 37,000 FBI employees, only about 300 of them are concentrated on cybercrime. So you've got a manpower problem. You've got jurisdictional problems. On these platforms, I mean, Ms. Haugen is completely correct. It's a for-profit business. They are there to make money. They're not going to put a lot of money into safety, security, trust, anti-fraud. They're not going to do that. They're trying to impress their shareholders. That being said, you can mitigate the problem. I absolutely believe you can get it down to 1%. Now, 1% sounds like that's a lot, but there's a lot of criminals that are out there. The problem is today is that especially in the United States, we signal to people that a lot of fraud is okay. Corporations do it. The government does it. And that signals to people on the street that, hey, it's okay for you to do it. Now, you go on Telegram today. Telegram has 16-year-olds that are bragging that they're not going to be arrested. And they're correct. They literally say on Telegram, they can't get us all. And they're correct. That type of mindset, not only that, but the platforms themselves, the criminal platforms, whether it be on Facebook, Telegram, LinkedIn, what have you, those platforms are filled with individuals that tell other criminals that, hey, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. This is how you do it. This is how you succeed. This is how you don't get caught. They share, exchange, collaborate better than the good guys.
It's just mind-boggling. You know, you say, both you and Francis have now said that this is for profit, but these are the biggest, richest companies in the world among them. I mean, how much is that level of profit worth when they are compromising their own customers and essentially putting themselves at risk for being held liable for cybercrime? Is there no deterrent in that, Brett?
Well, that's part of the problem, right? I mean, I've talked to people at Facebook. I'm very fortunate today that I'm widely respected on the good guy side. I've talked to people at Facebook, and there's this perception that if Facebook were to go out or Meta were to go out and try to stop all of the fraud on their platform, and they miss some of it, that potentially makes them liable for what they're missing. Now, how much profit are we talking about? Billions of dollars, billions of dollars. And it's not just advertising. It's the engagement from those reels, from the posts, from the groups that talk about fraud. So you've got criminals that use those things, that engage with those things. You've got aspiring criminals that engage with that. You've got security professionals. You've got law enforcement. You've got people that are curious. All of those people drive engagement on those platforms, and that means even more profit for Meta.
I would go in there and put a tiny little wrinkle on that. So there's this concept of diminishing marginal returns. So every time you put another dollar in, you get slightly less back for it. I think the thing that people should take away from what Brett and I are saying is that you can get half as much fraud for not a lot of money. Like when I worked on, I was on the threat investigation teams. These are people who go hunt bad guys in various small, like manually intensive. We go research it. We go find the bad guys. In our case, it was for counter-espionage, but the cybercrime team was like right next door to us. And the reality was, if they had one or two more engineers, they would have taken down 10 times as much stuff. So it's not a question of, it's not going to cost $5 billion to take down 90% of the fraud, but that is worth more than $5 billion out of people's pockets around the world.
Darrell, let me turn to you, okay? Yeah. And just establish whether or not you're on the same page as what you just heard. And also please address, if you are on the same page there, how much worse this could all get with AI and how much harder is it going to be to police?
Problem is bad. Our guests are certainly correct in that, and it is getting worse because, as you point out, the AI tools are getting more sophisticated. It is now possible for people to manufacture fake videos, fake audio tapes. They can take the voice of your grandmother, place a call to you, have your grandmother say, hey, I'm in trouble. I need $500. I need $1,000. Can you wire this to me? It's going to sound just like your grandmother. And so increasingly, it's difficult to distinguish a real phone call from a fake phone call. And this is a tremendous boon to criminals all around the world. It doesn't take a lot of technical sophistication now to engage in online fraud. And so many of us are living our lives online. We're online all the time. And so as people's activities have moved online, crime has moved online. But there are things that can be done. Government should get more serious about this. Law enforcement needs to put many more resources into digital crime as opposed to robbing banks and kind of more traditional types of things. A lot of law enforcement agents around the world just don't have the technical means to track down, identify, and develop the evidence required to actually convict these criminals.
Interesting. I mean, let's look at the United States, though, quickly with you, Darrell, in particular. How much more could the government actually step up here, and does it want to?
The problem is the government in the United States isn't doing hardly anything to really deter these types of crimes, because since the internet was created 30 years ago, tech companies have been granted an exemption from legal liability for bad activities that take place on their site. The original idea was, hey, this is a new technology, let's just let it flourish and we'll see what happens. We're now suffering the consequences of that libertarian attitude, just in the sense that in the United States, tech companies are not liable for what happens on their platform. And so the fraud has migrated online because the legal consequences are quite minimal. Now, the European Union has adopted much tougher stances on online fraud, misinformation, and disinformation. They are actually imposing much more significant penalties. And this is something that I think other governments need to do. So certainly the U.S. government should do a lot more than it currently is doing.
Yeah, Francis, there's another. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
But one of the things I would point out there that is very different between most of the immunity conversation we have in the United States and cybercrime specifically is if you're getting targeted through an ad. So this isn't just someone posted in a group. This isn't someone sent you a DM. If you get sent an ad through Facebook services, they profited through that interaction. And that's a key thing where you don't have immunity under Section 230 for that kind of activity.
Right.
Exactly. And Brett, talk more about that. Talk about how these scams, these frauds, this misinformation all help feed the addictive nature of social media and how the content keeps people hooked and ultimately leads to more clicks, more time online, more revenue for these companies.
Sure. So think of it like this. In order for me to defraud you, I have to get you to trust me. If you're not going to trust me, I can't get you to send me money. So those advertisements that are coming across, individuals who are on those platforms, they see the advertisement, they trust the platform to vet the individuals who are placing those ads. They trust that, so that they're immediately engaging with those things. They see those shirts, the furniture, the face coverings when the pandemic was on, whatever that is. They see that, they immediately trust that because they trust the platform. Most individuals don't understand that the platform largely doesn't care. It's an ad dollar. That's what they're looking for. At the same time, algorithms work to put us in our own little echo chambers. So you go on, say, Facebook, for example. You go on Facebook, you look at a reel of a fast car or fake money. There's many fake or they call it prop money on Facebook. There's many different groups of selling prop money, otherwise known as counterfeit currency. So you engage with one of those reels, and all of a sudden that algorithm starts to feed you more and more content based on that, then advertisements based on that. So you're put in your own little echo chamber where everything just continues to drive that to convince you that, hey, this is what you need to engage with. And before you know it, you're either buying those illegal goods and services or you're engaging and using those illegal goods and services. That's the problem with these platforms. That's the problem with the algorithms. The individuals who use that, who engage with that, they find themselves trapped within that algorithm, and it's very hard to get outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Darrell, another incentive for these companies, and by default, in a way, the government itself, to actually fight this fraud and invest in fighting these scam artists and the fraud involved, is that people who fall victim, most of them can't really afford the legal help, the attorneys that they would need to take on these organizations.
Now, that certainly is a big problem. And one of the things at Brookings that we advocate is digital literacy training programs, because you're right, there are vulnerable people out there, senior citizens, other people who are not well-versed in technology scams, who then fall victim to this. And they're losing billions of dollars every year to these types of scams. And so we need digital literacy training programs that basically educate people about the internet, about how to spot scams, fraud, and misinformation, basically train people in the same way that we've trained people in other eras when new things came along. We need to get serious about digital crime. It's really becoming rampant, seems to be increasing every year. And there are obviously things companies need to do to police what is happening on their websites. There are things governments need to do in order to prosecute the criminals and get serious about combating this. But ordinary people also need to get more informed about what is taking place, how scams operate, and what they can do to protect themselves.
Okay, quickly, Brett, why did you look skeptical there?
So the issue is, and I'm all for awareness training and education. He's absolutely right. We need that. The problem with this training is it takes place at a rational level. That's the problem. I don't try to attack you at that rational level. I'm looking to get you to react emotionally. So you can do all the training, all the education that you want to at that rational level. That doesn't mean that potential victim understands it at an emotional level. And that's where I operate. We have to revamp the way we're educating, the way we're raising awareness to incorporate that rational aspect of the way attackers actually operate.
Okay, Francis, let me ask you this. You very publicly took on Facebook, and you were hopeful that Meta's social media monopoly would be broken up via, a major antitrust case. That didn't happen. And now the Federal Trade Commission is actually appealing the case, but they're also trying to stop Meta from monetizing the data of its teenage users. So I need you to tell me how important it is for you going forward that the FTC succeeds in this. It's under the umbrella of this massive antitrust case, succeeds in this appeal.
So the thing that is actually the big mover in the United States. So you may be aware, in the United States, we have a government that struggles to pass laws. Sometimes it struggles to act, but we're really good at suing each other. It's something I think is a distinctly American trait. And we've had huge societal problems like tobacco or opiates that impacted millions and millions, tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. And the only way to resolve them was with a giant class action lawsuit. And the first of those giant class action lawsuits, which may end up in a ban of under 16-year-olds if it's successful, like not even a question of monetizing data, just off the platform, huge damages. That trial, the first of those trials, is going on right now. And I believe Mark Zuckerberg is testifying today. So that's what's going to move the needle. The FTC, I wish them luck. I want them to act, with the SEC, want them to act. But the thing that I think is going to be the big mover this year is those class action lawsuits.
How confident are you that they're going to?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's so interesting. So TikTok and Snapchat already settled. So there were 4 companies sued, at least for this first case. They're going to try maybe 20 of these bellwethers out of a class of 1,500 kids. And they settled, but Facebook didn't. And the one thing that I'm a little worried about is Facebook makes so much money that they might have run the numbers and said, we're just going to keep trying these cases, because even if we lose all of them, it won't matter, because delaying makes us so much money. So that's the one thing that I'm a little worried about.
Again, we're down to our last 2 minutes, Brett. What are the incentives? What are the real incentives for these companies to do the right thing?
There's not.
Nothing
That's
at
the
all.
thing. There's no incentive for that. No, there's not. It's you have to remember that a company has no real moral basis. They can say, don't do evil, but that's not really, written in stone. That's more of a suggestion. And if profits come in the way of that, it goes out the window. And unfortunately, a lot of consumers out there, a lot of potential victims out there, they don't understand that.
Yeah. And so, Darrell, that comes back to your platform here, pushing for education at the most basic level so it can be prevented before it happens, I guess.
Yes, education certainly is important, but the good news is there is a growing techlash, a backlash against various types of technologies. Certainly AI is at the forefront of this. People worried about the job loss, the impact on teenage women in particular. So companies are eventually going to have to realize they need to get more responsible, because their consumers are turning against them. Their consumers are worried about technology. They're worried about AI. They see all the scams and all the fraud that is taking place. And if they don't get more serious about addressing this, they could lose a substantial part of their consumer base.
Okay. Very unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. There's so much more to talk about, but I really, truly appreciate all three of you joining this panel. So insightful, such valuable information to share. And thanks to our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media. Do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.